Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host Mike Lepre, here with my co-host Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
This week on Screwball, we got a little bit to talk about here, some similar stuff that we've been hearing recently, some COVID stuff, more drama with the Astros, and of course we'll go over our who's hot and who's not for the week. But why don't we get started with a little bit different of a news story, the top of the news today. Plesac and Mike Clevinger breaking protocol about quarantining or being sent home. They're on the restricted list. Cleveland released the following statement on Monday morning, quote, "Today the organization learned that right-handed pitcher Mike Clevinger violated team protocols in the club's recent road trip to Chicago. He has been instructed to quarantine and will undergo subsequent testing while away from the team. Right-handed pitcher Adam Plutko will start in place on Tuesday night against the Chicago Cubs. The Cleveland Indians will continue to keep the health and safety of our players, coaches, and staff members as our top priority," end quote. That coming from MLB.com. So what do you think of what's going on here with Plesac and Clevinger kind of breaking protocol? I believe Plesac went to a nightclub on Saturday or something like that. He wanted to go out, and Clevinger they didn't even know about until the next day or something. He was with the team. So, I mean, what do you think of this whole situation? A little strange, a little kind of nonsensical from their standpoint, you know?
Well, I think they went together. I think they're part of the same thing. They went together to this nightclub or whatever. Plesac wanted to go out with friends or something. I think the MLB should step in, and I think they should suspend them amount of games that you know, 8 to 10 games like they did Joe Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Joe Kelly was more for on-field issue, but they should come in and suspend him. Not just restricted list. They should get suspended with no pay. They broke the guidelines, they broke the rules, and they can't be trusted. And then for Clevinger, they don't know about for a day. You never know. You don't know what happens or where he went or who he's seen or whatever. But maybe he does pick the virus up, and now he spread it to the team, and now you're Cardinals 2.0 or Marlins 3.0, and you're getting all over again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think MLB needs to step in and hand down some sort of punishment to show that they just can't do it. All the teams are going to because the teams can only do so much.
Mm-hmm.
The league can step in and punish them, and they'll show to other players like, hey, don't do that, or this is what happens.
Yeah, it was weird reading it and finding out for the first time this happened, especially, Plesac and Clevinger are kind of two of the Indians' better pitchers. They're a big important part of that team, an important part of that rotation. So not only is this going to screw them, for playing time and their stats and stuff, it's screwing the Indians from a perspective of just play. They're going to maybe, they got lesser guys pitching now, so you could say. And, it screws them in a way that, who knows, maybe they did pick it up and spread it to the team. That's even worse. So who knows, we'll obviously see what happens in the future. I'm sure they're going to do rigorous testing. We'll see what happens. Maybe the league does step in and maybe bring down some sort of suspension. I'm not sure at this point. But we'll see what happens. It's interesting. Still got people, I guess, not following the rules. All right, number 2. The Cardinals continue to have COVID troubles as they have only played 2 games in the last 11 days. There have been 10 players and 7 staff members to be affected by the outbreak. And, quote, "As the schedule stands, the Cardinals will play the White Sox in Chicago on Friday night. In order to complete a full 60-game season, St. Louis would need to play 55 games in 45 days," end quote. That coming from MLB.com. So the Cardinals are, the most recent victim of the COVID outbreak, kind of the Marlins 2.0, as you kind of put it before. They haven't played in a little bit. They had a scheduled doubleheader, I believe, on Thursday. That got canceled, I believe. So their next available day, I think, is Friday. And they're going to have to, like I just said here, you're going to have to play 55 games in 45 days. It's going to be a little rough on that team. So, I mean, what do you think about where the Cardinals are sitting? I mean, do you think that they could be like the Marlins and kind of come out of this and kind of start playing well? You think they might have a little bit of a slow start? Or what do you think the Cardinals are at?
Well, the Cardinals will be fine just because they're deeper than the Marlins for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they have 7 of them or more staff members compared to the Marlins having 14 players or 15 players, 16 players. So you're talking a couple less players. And I believe the main reason why this is ongoing is because there was a couple more tests after the initial tests. So the initial set of players were kind of already recovering and kind of heading their way back to the team, and then a few other ones tested positive. So they could probably even get a couple of the first guys who first tested positive kind of come back. And again, this was another thing where they rumored that it was thought about that some of the guys went out. So and here you go, and then you have guys for the Indians going out. So it's just it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the league decides to do. I think the league should step in for the Indians case, but the Cardinals will be back here soon. They'll probably be. They're not going to play all the games. They're not going to make them all up. unless the league maybe steps in and is like, hey, we're going to push the regular season 1 extra week just so we can make some games up. I could see them doing something like that. Or they'll just go by like, hey, let's just get like everybody within like 3 games, 4 games of each other, and then just go by win percentage, which is fine too.
Yeah.
So they'll be fine. They're a deep team, and obviously they got a bunch of veterans, Wainwright and Molina and Goldschmidt, Matt Carpenter, so they'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Cardinals are a good team, so I don't think that. I think you will see some sort of effect, especially if they do end up having to play a lot of those games in 45 days.
Look, the NL Central's done nothing. Their best team in the division really is probably the Reds, talent-wise, and they've really sitting around 500.
Yeah.
So at some point, the Cubs are red hot right now. They'll cool off a little bit, so they're not really far out of this. And obviously with the extended playoffs, I mean, if you're 500, you're probably one of the better teams, to be honest. So
yeah, at this point, yeah, as long as you're not one of the teams like like the Marlins or the Cubs right now, even though they haven't played quite as many games. Yeah, the Cardinals, I think they'll be fine. Hopefully, they won't have to play that many games in that many days. That's really that's a hell of a stretch. All right, number 3, another Astros news piece.
No kidding.
The Astros were involved in another scuffle recently, as this time it was with the Athletics, specifically Ramon Liriano. Ramon Liriano fully regrets his actions, as he reported, and he is going to be suspended 6 games for his actions.
Well, he regrets his actions because the guy that he said he was going to go fight was a loser. That's why he said he regrets him. Doesn't regret going over there. He regrets going over there for that guy because he said he's a loser.
Yeah.
Which, you can't blame him.
Liriano got into a heated argument with the Astros hitting coach Alex Cintron, if that's how you properly say it, leading into a benches clearing brawl. Now, recently, just before we started recording, the suspensions came down, and the hitting coach for the Astros, Alex Cintron, had been suspended 20 games, and Ramon Liriano was suspended 6 games. Ramon Liriano is currently appealing it, so he will continue to play until the appeal is over. Alex Cintron, I don't believe, is appealing it, so he will begin his suspension immediately. Liriano was hit twice that game, and the Athletics were hit quite a few times in that series, so I can imagine that tensions were high, especially it just being a division rivalry, plus everything going on with the Astros. So this time it was the Astros hitting someone, and there being a fight, and there being some sort of problem. So, like I said, another piece of news we have with the Astros, they just can't. First of all, they're not playing all that great, and second of all, they can't seem to avoid drama at all at any point this season. So, I mean, what do you think about what really happened here with Ramon Liriano and where the Astros are even at right now?
Well, I mean, Liriano's kind of an outspoken guy in the field. He's got hit before last year and kind of had some small scuffles. But I believe the Astros beamed 5 A's in a 3-game series and beamed Liriano twice in 1 game.
Yeah.
What he did originally after he got hit the second time with the action with the curveball, trying to tell the guy how to throw a curveball. There was no ill effect there.
No.
The guy wasn't aggressive at all. He was just upset, like, hey, I got hit twice now, 1 game. I don't want to get hit. I got to play 60 games in 64 days.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get hit any more than I gotta. And a team like that does it. And then all of a sudden, you're walking down there and you're getting chirping from the dugout the whole way, it seems. Seems a story. Someone was chirping from the dugout, or multiple people from the dugout the whole way down its baseline. And then you get a coach coming out, stepping onto the field, telling the player to come over to fight him, and then coming onto the field. That's just, it's just stupid. And then hide behind 3 guys.
Yeah, of course.
If you want to be the big bad guy, then go out there to fight him.
That's
Obviously, they say things were said about his mother or something. They said,
yeah.
I don't know about,
He denied that, Alex Cintron. He denied.
Of course he did, yeah. He denied the fact that they use a trash can too, but it's sitting right there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I think the top popped off of that, the Astros thing, once the Joe Kelly, once he did his thing, and now it's it's almost like someone once you pop the top off, you can't put it back on.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at right now, and it's good. The A's aren't gonna. They ain't gonna take nothing from the Astros.
No.
The Astros are falling apart from the seams here, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Liriano had no problem with what Liriano did. Suspended 6 games. I think he appeals it, maybe wins that, maybe gets a couple games off it, maybe gets it to 3, maybe gets 4. I don't know. With the Astros coach, he should be done for the year. You're a coach. You're not supposed to be fighting. He started the fight. If he doesn't say a word, there's no fight. He walks on the field. He's telling them to come fight him, and they stand in the back of the line.
Yeah.
We'll see. They got to play each other a bunch of times coming up. So, we're going to expect some more fireworks.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And, we'll see what happens. But I see what Liriano did was nothing wrong. That's just how it is. And the Astros got their first suspension ever. It seems like.
How about that?
Yeah, coach.
Yeah, of course.
There's no impact on him really much. So that's good. We got our first Astros suspension. Yay.
I guess you could say the MLB finally did right. I mean, 20 games, it's a 60-game season. That's, pretty hefty suspension. But like you said, it's a coach. It's not, I don't know how much impact it'll have. But, I mean, I don't hate the fact that Liriano did get 6 games. I'm sure, like you said, he probably will appeal it, probably get it down a little bit. It is what it is. I think that might still be a little bit hefty for a 60-game season. But, it is what it is. And I don't really think that Ramon Liriano was in the wrong. Especially, like I said, with all the tension between the Astros and them and just everything with the Astros. It's,
He's a fiery guy.
Oh, yeah,
so
exactly.
It's just kind of, it wasn't like a LeMahieu out there.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden he just went, berserk because he's a calm guy. This is a guy that's already kind of seems like he's on edge all the time. So you do something, against him once or twice, and then all of a sudden, he's just not going to take it no more.
Yeah.
So, and he is one of the leaders of that team, believe it or not. So, he sometimes feels like he's got to do something to show what the team feels. Especially when some of the guys are Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, they're kind of like quieter guys. So he's kind of that guy who's, not so quiet. So he's going to, say what the team feels. He's going to do what the team feels. So he's one of those guys. Yeah. So he said, you want to fight? You want to fight? Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll come over there and, I'll beat you up. And then he's in the back of the line.
Always how it ends up.
Yeah.
The guy who starts it always ends up in the back. All right, enough about the Astros. Yeah. Number 4, getting into some injury news. Giancarlo Stanton is yet again bit by the injury bug as he's been diagnosed with a grade 1 hamstring sprain. He's expected to miss about 3 to 4 weeks of action, adding to his recent stretch of injuries that kept him largely out of the Yankees lineup in 2019. In 14 games this season, Stanton is batting .293, 12 for 41, with 3 doubles, 3 homers, and 7 RBIs. That all coming from MLB.com. So, Stanton can't seem to catch a break, can't seem to play a full year this year and last year. It sucks because he's been playing well. He's a talented guy. He's really one of the stars of the game and really big part of that Yankees lineup, especially that power portion of their lineup, with him and Judge in the center there. So, I mean, that we got a few more injuries to talk about, but I think this one is a big blow to the Yankees, and I think he'll be back, mid-September, late September, probably there for a playoff push or something, barring any more injuries or setbacks or whatever. It's a grade 1 strain. We'll see what happens. What do you think? I mean, Stanton just can't seem to get lucky. Just can't seem to play full season,
Yeah, I mean, he's all right. There's not going to be much, 3 to 4 weeks. The Yankees are always just way too cautious with some of their injuries. So really, probably could be like 2 weeks. But they're going to be real cautious with them. Especially they already have a little bit of a lead in the division. Yeah. Expanding the playoffs, they already know they're one of the better teams. So even if they just make the playoffs, they don't really care where they play. They'll be all right. He'll be back. They're just gonna be, like I said, they're gonna be cautious with him. They were already cautious with him, not playing him in the outfield much. Yeah. So they'll be fine. Get him back. He knows what he could do. Everyone knows what he could do. So there's no reason to rush him. And with no minor leagues too, I think that slows the progress of getting back too. No minor league at bats. You go into alternate camp or whatever to get at bats, which is fine. But there's something different than getting in a live game. They'll be fine. He'll be back, not too far down the line here.
Yeah, and whenever he's on the field, he produces, so it's just getting him back on the field, Sure. There's no problem with his production.
To go off of, Stanton's injury, there's a few other guys here I always like to bring up some injuries, usually since it's some of the bigger names. Bumgarner went on the IL, dealing with an injury. Last start, he got shelled by the Padres. He was throwing like 87, 88 miles per hour, so obviously something was off there. Yordan Alvarez for the Astros, we haven't seen all year. Nobody's even known, really. You haven't even, you're like, where is this guy? There's no update. Undisclosed injury. He's been rehabbing, but there's no update. There's no update from him coming back. There's no update from the team saying like why he's out. So it's just undisclosed. But he is doing some activities and stuff like that. So hopefully you see him back soon, because out of some of the Astros guys, that's one of the guys you like. Carlos Delgado Jr., I like to think. He looks just like Carlos Delgado up there. It's fantastic. So, other than the other guys you can mention, Stroman opts out after his injury. He waited long enough, so he is part of the free agent class next year. So we'll see what happens there. Josh Donaldson hurt a calf, which he's had calf problems in the past. One of lasted him like a whole year. So we'll see what happens there. But Yeah, I mean, there's some big injuries going on. There's some other guys who went on the DL, or IL, I should say. CJ Cron recently got put on. So obviously, there's always injuries, but these are some of the bigger names or some of the more impactful players that you'll see on there. So
The Stroman news, I think, is probably like the bigger piece of news. I mean, big piece of that Mets rotation, or could have been, especially with Syndergaard out. And I think it's painfully obvious the reasons for his opting out, regardless of the, obviously, you know, COVID, you want to respect people's wishes if they want to just play it safe. But I think with the him just passing that eligibility mark for him to be able to become a free agent, I think that Stroman's reasons are pretty, I mean, without saying it, I think, you know what he's doing.
That was the reason for that, and also getting a little bit of his contract for the year.
Yeah.
So, not the greatest way to do it, you know, but, you know, the owners and the teams do it to the younger players when they call them up, kind of the service. So, a little bit of payback, but, you know, you never really like to see it.
Yeah.
So, other than that, some other news I like to bring up. You know, we mentioned a few things already. Nick Markakis decided to opt back in. His first game back with the team, he hits a walk-off home run. You know, welcome back, Markakis. He's a big part of that team, not as a player, but as a leader.
Yep.
And gotta love Nick Markakis, one of my favorite players, so that was fantastic to see. You know, he got some mentions about bubble playoffs, having a couple bubble spots for the playoffs to be played. Possibly, you know, Los Angeles, you know, something, you know, a couple different spots, which is not a bad idea for the playoffs because it's like, well, you get these teams playing all East Coast games, you know, the same division, same teams. Once the playoffs comes, that's not the way it is. It's not all of a sudden you're going to have the Rockies or whatever travel across and, you know, face, you know, the Braves.
Yeah.
You know, so having a bubble city or whatever, giving them a couple of days to kind of quarantine themselves and kind of figure it out that way, maybe not a bad idea, but it's good that they're thinking about it now instead of being like what they did with the expanded playoffs and wait 2 hours before the season started.
Yeah.
To make a rule there. And the Cincinnati Reds, they applied to the city, to the town, to the board to have fans back in the stadium at a certain percentage or whatever. Yeah, that wasn't really disclosed too much, but they are working on maybe getting some fans back. So that's, you know, good news.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And obviously great news for MLB and great news for the Reds because make a little revenue back.
Yeah.
So that's a great first step. So those are two really important things to keep an eye on. I mean, with no fans, a bubble playoff, I mean, there's no real difference when you play in a different ballpark. Really, obviously dimensions are different, but you don't no home crowd really to really worry about.
Yeah.
Making a big impact. Obviously, the impact's there, but not going to be crazy. So, not a bad idea. You know, other than that, I got some. You know, we got our normal routine here. Some teams, you know, I like to mention. The Rockies are still hot.
Yep.
And that's with, you know, Arenado really not doing that great. And David Dahl kind of struggling a little bit. So there's some guys in that team still struggling a little bit. And they're still, you know, one of the hottest teams in baseball.
Sure.
A's red hot.
Yeah.
I think they won like, 9 straight?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Fighting, beating the Astros, beating everybody. They don't care. And with no one doing good, really.
Yeah.
Chapman's like low 200s. Olson's under 200. Simeon's just got over 200. You know, they really have no one really hitting the ball that great. And they're winning games. So wait till you get 2-3 of these guys hot. All of a sudden, you know, they're unstoppable.
Yeah.
The Marlins are hot. That's just how it is. You know, you get guys you don't even know. The guy never played above single A, and all of a sudden he was pitching the majors. He struck guys out. He was doing great. You know, great stories there. Tigers red hot.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're 7-3 the last 10 games. Then of course you got to mention some of the teams that are playing not good. Angels.
Yeah.
You know, they finally kind of got their lineup back here. Other than Simmons is still out. Rendon, Trout finally came back from a paternity leave. Otani's hitting, not pitching, but hitting. But they're not playing great. Pirates are really not playing good at all. I think they have 2 wins this year, 2 to 3 wins this year. And they're 1-9 in the last 10. So they're not even really competing. Astros not playing well. Again, I mean, record-wise, they're a couple under 500, which isn't terrible. But with that Astro team, and you know what expected out of them, you expect them to at least be a game or 2 over. So they're not playing well at all either.
The Pirates are 3-13, by the way. Just so you know.
Yeah, 1-9 in their last 10.
Yeah.
I mean, and they just played a ridiculous series against Tigers. You know, their starting pitcher went, I think, 6 innings or 5 innings, no runs, or 1 run, and they ended up losing that game 17-13.
Unbelievable.
So not really playing very well, that's for sure. So I don't know if you got a few other teams you want to mention here, hot and not.
Yeah, I mean, who's doing the best right now? I mean, if you base it off of winning percentage, the Cubs. have the best right now. They're 10-3. They have a 769 winning percentage. Like you mentioned before, the follow behind them are the Marlins, A's, and Rockies, doing awesome. Behind them, I guess you could put, the Dodgers and the Yankees are up there. Twins, can't forget about them, that fucking lineup. Dodgers own the current best run differential, plus 40. The Pirates and the Mariners, no surprise, have the worst at minus 30. So they're not, the Pirates and the Mariners aren't doing great. Dodgers have a good run differential. A lot of these top teams have a good positive run differential. No one's really crazy yet, like you see at the end of some 162-game seasons. But those are you pretty much mentioned all the hot and cold teams of the league. Right now, the Cubs look like they're doing real good. So I was actually very surprised that they're doing that well.
Yeah, well, they're beating up some of the teams they're supposed to be.
Oh, yeah.
They played a couple of these Central teams. The AL Central not playing well. So they're doing what they're supposed to. They played the Pirates, I think, 6 times. So, that's pretty much all their wins there.
Yeah, that helps.
The Tigers are playing better, but still, not a solid team. The Royals won 4 straight.
Yeah.
So a team that's playing well, but still not a great,
Yeah.
So they've played some teams here. The Cubs that should have beat up on them, and they beat up on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, congratulate them. But we'll see what happens, especially when some of these teams start playing better, like the Reds, the Cardinals come back, and they get their chance to beat some of these teams up.
Yeah.
We'll see there.
Yeah, we're a quarter of the way through the season, so if you're hovering around 500 or so, you still got a good shot.
Like we said, like last week or 2 weeks ago, it was going to take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
To kind of get your feel, get back into the season, shake some rust off. So at this point, you're going to start seeing some of these teams kind of be who they're supposed to be, and some of these players kind of start turning the page. Yeah. So these teams are these players are going to start, shaking the rust off. They're going to turn these 100 batting averages and get them to the 200s, the 220s, the 230s. Some of these guys who are batting 450, they're going to start coming down to earth. Getting back down to 350. The numbers are going to start evening out. The play is going to start evening out. We get through those first 2 weeks. Like we mentioned already.
Yeah.
So we're going to see everything kind of evening out and getting back to true baseball and some of the backs of these players' baseball cards.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where we're at.
Yeah, sure. Well, that moves us nicely into our next segment of who's hot and who's not. We got a bunch of players here. Some players you've already heard before. Some players you already heard before on the opposite end of the spectrum here. So let's start off with the first hot player that I got. I know we've been talking about him. Fernando Tatis Jr., one player of the week. For the week, he batted .417, hit 5 homers and 8 RBIs, so he had a good week. Fernando Tatis Jr. coming into his own, still a real young guy. The Padres lineup is actually hitting pretty good, I gotta say. So I think they actually are third, close to the top of the division in the NL West. So you gotta kind of watch out for them. Number 2, for who's hot, is Charlie Blackmon.
True.
He is red hot. He batted .654 for the week with a 1,000 slugging and a 1,677 OPS. Just for the week.
Yeah, the best part about it is that's like almost his year stats.
Yeah.
I think he's batting like 460 something for the year, with like over, like a 1.1 OPS for the year. It's like, okay,
yep.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah, he's officially on the 400 average watch. It's got to be.
Jeez, he could bat 220 the next week. He'll still be batting 400.
I know. Yeah, he's red hot. Probably a lot of the reason that the Rockies are hitting so good. You got him at the top of the lineup. Why not?
That's the thing. Yeah, get a couple guys over there not doing the greatest. So him red hot. You get a couple of these guys turn the page and they start getting hot. I mean, jeez. All
right, number 3 I got is David Peralta. He is batting .478, 556. On base, and a 1295 OPS for the week. So David Peralta, a guy I know you like. You had him on your fantasy team.
I had a lot of these guys on my fantasy team.
Mm-hmm.
I had Blackmon for 2 years. I had Peralta for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez, I'd be feeling pretty good right now.
Yeah, all these guys are hitting good for the week. David Peralta, I don't think gets enough credit either. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, and I think his defense, I think he moved more left field this year. I think he's kind of played a little bit more right, but I think now he's more left field.
Yeah.
With the acquisition of Starlin Marte. His defense, I think, gets a little undermined. I've seen him make a couple plays this year. Left field, you're like, wow, that's a really nice play for a guy who's some might consider maybe a touch under average in the outfield, which I always kind of thought was surprising because I always thought him as at least average. At least you got to put out there, like, all right, I don't have to think twice out there.
Yeah.
So hopefully he starts getting a little bit more credit.
Yeah.
And definitely a guy to watch too. With Diamondbacks not playing the greatest, maybe they trade him.
Yeah. You never know. You see what happens. Trade deadline's coming up in like 2.5 weeks. All right, 4th guy is Salvador Perez. Like you said earlier, with the Royals doing pretty well recently. He's batting .458 with a 750 slugging and a 1212 OPS. So Salvador Perez, especially out of the catching position, that's something you'd like to see.
After missing a whole year and then with a half a year late start too.
Yeah.
So and then young pitchers, so he's got a lot on his mind.
Yeah.
and then be in the middle of the order.
Yeah.
Not much help there.
No, yeah, it's
So-
about him and Whit Merrifield is about it.
Yeah,
You know?
well, I guess Soler.
Soler,
I mean,
too,
you got
yeah.
some guys, but still, in the middle of the order, you can kind of pitch around him and not really worry too much. So, big ballpark. I mean, he's got a lot of things going against him, but, when you're good, you're good.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they're pitching around Soler and he's seeing the good pitches. You never know. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Salvador Perez is hitting good. And number 5, got to talk about him, Donovan Solano. Batting .458, 667 slugging, 1147 OPS for the week. I mean, he's another guy that I don't think gets enough credit. And for the season, for sure, people are starting to pay attention over there with the Giants. So, good for him.
So, here's the thing with him. Ready? So, I think last year he batted like 350 in a shortened time. So, that's great. But, so, there's a list out there for the Giants for the best averages through the first 16 games. And the list goes Barry Bonds, Donovan Solano. So, there you go. Bonds was like 550 through like 16 games or something like that. He's like 458 or something like that. So, that's the list.
Jesus.
It's not Willie Mays second, they're on. I'm sure they're on there. But the first two guys, Bonds, Solano. So, they go together.
Of course. Yeah. Of course, Bonds is on there. Why not? Some honorable mentions that I got. Guys that obviously have been hitting well. Mike Trout has been hitting the cover off the ball since he came back. Chapman had a huge game the other day. He has been batting good. He's been batting better. Good to have someone on the A's doing that in the middle of the lineup. Todd Frazier for the Rangers hitting pretty good. He's batting in the 400s last week. And Daniel Murphy is batting in the 400s for last week or so. So he's batting good. Another guy in the Rockies lineup that you want. I'm sure I don't know if he has a heck of a lot of home runs. Not usually a home run guy, but he's got the average, and that's, him and Blackman in that lineup doing good right now. So
Yeah. A few guys I want to mention. You said most of the guys that, I really wanted to bring up. But a few other guys, Jacoby Jones for the Tigers. He's having a good stretch here the last 7 games. I think he's up over 300. And for the year, I think he's like 280s for a guy who's really mostly a defensive guy. We seen him make an unbelievable play last year, and everybody watched him make unbelievable plays. But offensively, turning around, which is a big part of why the Tigers are playing better. And to go along with teams playing good, I got Brian Anderson from the Marlins. I think he's batting like 308, 309 for the year, and I think he's up over 320 or so for the last week. So, those two guys who we don't really talk too much about, especially Jacoby Jones. Brian Anderson's kind of on the up and up. But, two smaller name guys who are having, a good start of the year and for good, week. So I just wanted to bring those up. And I always like to throw a couple pitchers in there, too. Even though they're kind of hard to pick out. But one is a relief pitcher, and that's Randy Dobnak. I believe he's a relief pitcher, right? Or is he like he does both?
I think he does both. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. The Twins are crazy with pitching.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I think since last year he hasn't given up any more than 2 runs in an appearance.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah. Something crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, he's pitching really well. Trevor Bauer. Him and his crazy self. Pitching good. Dylan Bundy. Told you about that guy. Leave in Baltimore. He's going to go over there. He was going to be on my fantasy team, so I would have had a good team. Dinelson Lamet, another guy we talked earlier in the year. He's got a good start going. So there's a couple, pitchers doing well.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously you want to mention Frankie Montez, or I think that's how you say his name, for the A's. He won Player of the Week. So obviously throw his name out there. He's pitching pretty good. Maybe another reason the A's are doing so hot.
Sure.
Got good pitching.
Sure, always got to have good pitching.
Yeah. All right, moving on to who's not. Who's the cold guys this week? First guy I want to talk about is Elvis Andrus, the Rangers. Batting 172 with a 172 on-base percentage, a 414 OPS in the last week. So really not hitting all that hot. But he's a good hitter, Elvis Andrus, so I'm sure he'll turn that around. Next guy I want to talk about is Eloy Jimenez. 148 average, 148 on base, and a 407 OPS last week. And his teammate, the next guy I want to talk about is Jose Abreu. Batting 179, 207 on base, and a 493 OPS the last week. So 2 guys in that White Sox lineup that you kind of expect to be hitting real well. Didn't do all that great last week. Again, like I usually mention with these guys, they're, especially Jose Abreu, professional hitters. I'm sure that's not going to affect their season too much. Number 4 is a little bit of a surprise. I didn't expect to see on this list, but Nick Castellanos, after winning Player of the Week last week, still obviously having a great season. He's got a 293 average, 7 home runs, 16 RBIs for the season. But for the last week, he only batted 167 out of 259 on base, 718 OPS. Not ideal numbers for him.
Dropped his average, I believe, 70 so points or so
Yeah.
in a week.
Yeah, which he's still batting around 300, so I'm sure he's
sure
he's not too worried about it. I'm sure the Reds lineup ain't too worried about it. So,
No.
yeah, he's not one that I'm really watching on this cold list often. The last guy I want to talk about actually had one of the lowest averages for the week is with a high at-bat count is Ben Gamel. Only batted 130 with a 167 on base, 471 OPS. Ben Gamel's a pretty good hitter. He's not like the guys on this list that I think are like kind of more the elite hitters in the league. But he got a lot of at-bats like these guys, so unfortunately he only batted 130. Some guys that I just want to throw out there, some guys that really ain't hitting well still. Altuve can't seem to put it together. He had another bad week. But I think he's really just he's not having a good time out there at the moment. But he did a little better this week. That's why he wasn't on the top 5 here. He did have a little bit better week. I think he was in the 200s for the week. Marcus Semien still has yet to put it together. He's another guy I want to mention. Again, though, he had a little bit better week. He's not hitting quite as bad as he had been. Adam Frazier hasn't been hitting all that great. I think he had his averages in the low 200s, $180 or something like that. And Matt Olson I threw on here because although the guy's been hitting home runs we kind of said that he'd be one of the home run guys, he's only batting 160 on the week. So even though he had 4 or 5 home runs and some RBIs, it seems like kind of that's what he's only doing at the moment. And he's a good hitter. So I'm not all that worried about Matt Olson. But it's something to watch that he has a low average, high home run count.
Sure.
Something to keep an eye on.
And that's crazy too, because we talked about mostly guys for the A's not playing well so far, and they're one of the best records in baseball. So if they can get some of these guys just to kind of even out, and then some of these guys get hot, I mean, geez, they can go crazy,
Mm-hmm.
But a few other guys I got to mention: Scott Kingery, they're not doing well the whole year. For the most part, Max Muncy struggling recently. I don't think he's even batted 100 last week or so, give or take. Votto was off to that amazing start, and then he slowed down, and then he missed a few games. He's still not playing, great right now. Some pitchers-wise, Robbie Ray has like a 9-something ERA. Steven Matz just got lit up like a Christmas tree yesterday by the Braves.
Yep.
They put up like 7 runs against them or something like that. Mike Minor not pitching well, and Jose Barrios. Those are some pretty big name pitchers. Not pitching well. So I mean, like I said, you're gonna have some of these guys, be on the hot list one week and cold list next week. And that's just kind of how it goes. Nick Castellanos was player of the week, and then now he's batting 160 for the week.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of how it goes throughout the whole year, even a normal season or a 60-game season, it doesn't matter. It's just how it's gonna be. You just hope the cold streaks are 1 week long, the hot streaks are 2 weeks long.
Yeah. Yeah, or just stay off that cold list as much as you can, stay on that hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're
cold,
like
Charlie Blackmon.
Yeah, if you're cold and your cold weeks is 200.
Yeah.
For a week, that's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's when you're 180, 170, 160 for 2-3 weeks. That's kind of where you go. But when your hot week's 2 weeks and you're batting 350 for 2 weeks,
yeah,
that's where you want to be.
Yeah, you're doing all right for the season. Like I said, Castellanos, he's having a great season, but just for the week he didn't bat well. So, it is what it is. That's going to happen for any hitter.
Yeah. It's early on in the year still, believe it or not, even though the deadline's already coming up. And one big rule thing that the MLB has decided, did away with the continuous change in the roster size. They're going to go from 30 to 28, and that's going to be it. It's going to be 28 this year.
Okay.
So they're going to keep 2 extra players, which is smart with the COVID things going around. The teams give them 2 extra players, a little less movement, a little less decision-making out of the teams. So that was one big change the MLB has made, for the good so far this year. Other than that, there hasn't been many changes other than, like we already mentioned, maybe bubble cities for the playoffs, and hopefully the Reds are applying for fans. So we'll see where that goes, and what maybe some other teams follow suit. Also, Toronto, the Blue Jays, are finally going to be able to play in Buffalo. So their home stadium. They haven't played it in a stadium or their own stadium this year yet. Even though they have been the home team at places. So they're actually going to have a stadium to call home now from here on out. So that's a big step for them for the rest of this year. Other than that, though, we hit most of the important things we wanted to talk about.
Another guy, actually, we got a game on here while we're watching. I didn't even know this. Eugenio Suarez batting 132.
Yeah, we brought him up last week as one of the colder players. He has started hitting a couple home runs, I believe. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
He's too good of a player to, bunch of these guys are too good of players to be where they're at.
That's like the guy like the Yankees too, Gleyber Torres, really hitting great. That's another guy that you're kind of just look at and go, well, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think also yesterday or 2 days ago, Charlie Morton left the game after 1 inning. So that's a guy to look at, especially for the Rays, kind of struggling a bit.
I think he actually did get put on the IL. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so there's another guy for, like I said, team that's kind of struggling a little bit to lose. Maybe not the ace, but definitely the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to bring up all the guys, especially in a shortened season, because there are going to be a lot of ILs and in and out. So,
yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's going to be, roster's going to be ever changing all year long.
Yeah.
So guys getting called up, guys getting sent down. Some of these young guys are going to get called up, maybe before they wanted to, before the teams want them to call up. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But other than that, the last thing we want to go into is our weekly trivia question. And I know you guys, on the Twitter, we usually do multiple choice. This one's going to be, I don't think it's going to be able to do multiple choice here.
Yeah, it'd be tough.
Yeah. This one really has no facts or, stats or nothing to do with that. This one is just, where does the saying out of left field come from? Where did it ever come from? Out of left field, that one came out of left field. There's a couple different versions of it, but it's the same, meaning. And you guys know what the meaning is, crazy, unusual, whatever.
Yeah.
And the answer to that is the Cubs' original ballpark they played in, like 1890s to 1915. West Side Grounds, West Side Park, had a couple versions of the name as well. In left field, behind left field, there was a mental institution, hospital for, whatever issues were going on. And the patients would be able to watch the games, through the fences and whatever else. And they always said the outfielders would hear, and even other players in the other part of the field would hear, just weird things getting said and weird noises getting made, and they would comment towards the players. So it was always like weird things going on. So that's where the saying came from. That one came out of left field. It's unusual. It's weird. You're not expecting it. So they didn't expect those noises or those comments. So that one came out of left field.
Yeah, I like that. I had no idea where that came from.
Yeah, and there's some, some people say, I don't know if that's completely. Most people say that's where it really came from.
Yeah.
I mean, where else are you gonna get left field?
Yeah. I thought it came from a movie. I thought it was a movie line.
So yeah, so that's what they said. That's where they believe it originated from, and that's pretty much how the story goes. So just remember that where it came. That's where we get that. And one thing great about that ballpark, the dimensions of that field, it was 340 down each line, which is okay. It was 560 feet to center field. So just to go along with those old style ballparks, just massive to center field. So that was one of them. Yeah. And this was before Wrigley Field.
Yeah, which
was the original ballpark.
Yeah, I didn't even know where they play. I thought it was some Polo Grounds-esque, but it really was Polo Grounds-esque, that deep center. But
and I believe the institution's still there. I believe the College of Illinois or College of Chicago or something like that uses it. That institution that was out in left field.
Oh, okay.
So I believe the building, I don't know if it's the original building or whatnot, but I believe they still use that ground or that area. So,
cool.
But yep, that's where the saying comes from.
Yeah, that's a good trivia question. Obviously, I can't fill that into the Twitter multiple choice thing, but
no.
Yeah, hopefully people responded with it. All right. Well, I mean, do you have anything else that you want to talk about before we go? Any little news or injuries or anything just you want to mention about what you're thinking about with the season?
I think season's going well. I think the MLB and the players have adjusted well, and I think we're going to see a little bit better baseball and a little bit more, normal baseball. And, usual numbers and everything's going to start turning soon because we got those couple weeks out of the way, first 2 weeks or so, where the players can kind of get used to their, get their feet under them.
Yeah.
So we should see some little bit better baseball. We're coming down to the trade deadline already, so we'll see if there's going to be any moves or if it's going to be like, no, we can't really make moves yet because, it only takes 3 games and you're either in it or you're out of it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So we're going to have a couple real exciting episodes coming up.
Yeah. We'll have a lot to talk about with the trade deadline. I love that time of year.
Sure.
It's cool to see how the moves that get made and how teams can really change.
Sure.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode. So obviously we'll be back next week talk about maybe the Astros will be in a scandal again.
Probably.
It seems what it's likely that and COVID. Just you know what I mean.
Sure.
All right. But until then, you can listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as our website screwball.podbean.com. You can also listen to this podcast on our regularly updated YouTube channel. You can follow me on Twitter at RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FDubs10.
You can follow our official Screwball Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Screwball Facebook at ScrewballPod. No E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care.